All right. So today we're going to be doing a GH secretagogue tier list. So you can get better sleep, better recovery, better fat loss. What are the best GH peptides to use? Okay, so first we'll start off by explaining what GH is, how it works, and what the benefits of GH are by itself, because in relation to that, everything is the side effects come from that, most of the side effects as well as the benefits, right? So let's understand the benefits and side effects of GH first. Okay, something that is underrepresented and is often misrepresented is that GH is anabolic by itself. Okay, GH has negligible anabolic activity on its own without the use of AAS, without the use of steroids. Okay, um, they've done a study, trained men, and they found that there was pretty much no contractile tissue, no strength gains. Right now, this is often um, confused because lean mass gains do occur, which result from mostly glycogen and also like not contractile tissue, sorry, connective tissue, okay, but not actual muscle. Now that's kind of up for debate, but for the most part, you're not going to be seeing any huge anabolic effects directly from GH. Okay, there are anti-catabolic effects. So GH is kind of the hormone that your body releases when it's in a deficient state, in a sense, when it is wanting to liberate free fatty acids, when it's wanting to use fat as fuel instead of muscle, right? So it's kind of preserving muscle and using fat. Okay, and that's the reason for some of the effects and the side effects, but GH is anti-catabolic on its own without the use of steroids. Okay, it increases nitrogen retention in studies, it preserves lean mass, it decreases protein oxidation within a deficit. Okay, so it's anti-catabolic. It also increases T4 to T3 conversion. Now, T4 thyroid hormone. T4 is the inactive thyroid hormone. T3 is the active version. Okay, so it's going to take the T4 you have and increase the conversion to T3, which might result in maybe a 5 to 10% difference in basal metabolic rate. So it might have a minor effect on your metabolism as well. The reason most people use it, big benefit, is faster recovery and better sleep. Okay, the dreams on GH, the deep sleep increase is crazy. Okay, you can hear it from anybody who's on GH. They sleep better and they often recover faster. I notice for me, I'm able to go to the gym more times per week because of it. Okay. Another thing is collagen synthesis. Now, this is for joint health. This is for injury prevention, injury healing, skin, hair, nails, right? This is why all the moms are using it as a longevity kind of like anti-aging peptide, is because it's good for your skin. It increases collagen synthesis. Okay, so those are pretty much all the benefits. I might be missing a few things, but here are the side effects. The big two, which we see with long-term high-dose use, are potentially acromegaly-like features, which are, enlarging of the hands. Look at Andrei Smayev, dude. Rumored is rumored to use 120 IUs of GH a day. Okay, his hands are huge, his feet are huge. That stuff grows. Your jaw, kind of lengthening of a jaw. If you look up people with acromegaly, they look weird, and that's a pituitary tumor or whatever that's causing them to produce extra GH. And so high dose over multiple years can cause this. The thing is with secretagogues, generally they don't produce enough of a super physiological level of GH for this to be a risk. Okay, that's the good thing. However, there are some side effects of GH that people do get with secretagogues. Number one is water retention. And this can show up as in the face, it can show up as in the muscles, even, which is why some people like it. It gives them that kind of like full look, which is why it's also often confused with, contractile tissue gains. It gives them kind of that full look, which is why people like it. But this is also responsible for things like carpal tunnel, joint pain, edemas, right? This can all be the result of GH use, usually at, maybe 4 IUs and up, but it is something that happens to people on secretagogues, so it's important to know. The other thing, and this is prevalent if you're doing long-term, even use of GH peptides, is insulin resistance. Okay, if you already have poor insulin resistance or you're predisposed to diabetes, this can be a thing because the liberation of free fatty acids into the bloodstream makes it hard for glucose muscles to uptake glucose. It interferes with a lot of processes. It worsens insulin resistance over time. Okay, when you have more GH. Now, this is something that can be managed, but also well, mitigated, but also managed in terms of making sure you don't get diabetes by just getting a glucose blood monitor and checking your levels in the morning fasted. Okay, so you want to be usually not above 100. Okay, above 100, you want to start to try to mitigate that. Use some berberine, some slim pills, retatrutide, whatever. Okay. My last blood test, I had a fasting blood glucose of 88. Okay, so just for reference. Um, Now, there are two types. When you're beginning to understand GH secretagogues, there's two vital things you have to understand. Is there are two types, okay? And when you're creating a stack of GH secretagogues, you have to use one from each class, okay? If you stack two from the same class, it's gonna be the same effect, like negligible effects, right? Because it's like hitting the same pathway with two different drugs, right? It makes no sense. It's dumb. Now the first type is GHRH. Okay, this is what CJC 1295 DAC is, GHRH. The second one is GHRP. Okay, now that might be confusing. GHRH is your body's main signal to release growth hormone. Okay, like when you go to sleep, when you're getting growth hormone pulses from exercise, whatever it might be, GHRH is your body's signal from the hypothalamus, I believe, to the pituitary to release growth hormone. Okay, GHRP is basically mimicking the hormone ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. Okay, because when you when you get hungry, you actually have a GH release, like fasting causes an increase in GH. Now, the thing we'll talk about is that ghrelin doesn't just act on the pituitary to release GH. There's a reason it's called the hunger hormone. It acts on other receptors. And we're going to kind of see that with the side effects of GHRPs, but that's not an issue with GHRHs because they act solely on the pituitary. All right. So let's start the tier list. S tier is going to be HGH. Okay. This is what everything is trying to mimic. In terms of everything, nothing really beats it, right? Because you're just trying to get a certain amount of HGH. And with HGH itself, you basically decide whatever level you want to set. Okay. The only advantage is like with GH secretagogues, maybe the natural pulsatile rhythm is maintained, which is something you'll hear from like one of those peptide moms. Whether that makes it a lot safer is kind of up to debate. But if you, for some reason, are appeal to naturalism, logical fallacy, and you want a physiologic pulse, then don't use HGH because it has a half-life of 2 to 4 hours, and yeah, it's definitely not the same as your natural GH. Okay, so HGH is the gold standard. This is what all these peptides are trying to live up to. Now, tesamorelin is kind of the golden child of GHRHs. Remember that first one, GHRHs. This is the main signal for growth hormone. Okay, tesamorelin is the golden child. You've probably heard of it. It's FDA approved, and there's plenty of long-term safety data. This is why it's preferred by a lot of people who are just getting into peptides and maybe are more risk adverse. They see tesamorelin as very safe. Okay, it's very effective in increasing IGF-1 levels, and it's just generally a solid peptide. Now, here's the problem. Let's talk about the dosage. Tesamorelin dosage is 1 milligram to 2 milligrams per day. Okay, now 2 milligrams is going to have pretty much double the effect of 1 milligram in terms of IGF-1 elevation. And so there's no point of diminishing returns. So if you want the max return, you'd use 2 milligrams. The problem is, if you go on a research peptide website and you look at a bottle of tesamorelin, like 10 milligrams, if you're getting a good price, it's like $60. Okay, so you're using it 2 milligrams a day. Let's do some math here. 2 milligrams a day, 10 milligram bottle, $60. You're using that in 5 days. That's not economic at all. Even if you're ordering kits from China, it's still expensive. Okay, more expensive than generic GH. Maybe not pharma, but more expensive than generic GH. Okay, so that's really the main downside of tesamorelin. Another thing I want to say is a lot of people purport it to be magical at reducing visceral fat. Now, GH reduces visceral fat, but there's nothing special about tesamorelin as a secretagogue that magically reduces visceral fat that other secretagogues don't, right? So it's just more studied for that. So maybe theoretically there is, but it's the same mechanism of action. All right, so we're gonna put tesamorelin. I put it in A tier, but I'm gonna put it in B tier just because it is very expensive. This is for somebody who's like really prioritizes, really cares about long-term studies and safety data, and has the money to afford it. Okay, so tesamorelin. The next one is going to be the less well-studied, slightly less effective brother of testosterone, which is CJC 1295. Okay, so this is also a GHRH, and it acts on the pituitary to release a level of GH in the blood, which gets converted to IGF-1 in the liver. Same stuff, right? Um, Here's the thing with this peptide, and this is kind of a personal anecdote. This peptide scares me, okay, because I've taken this peptide multiple times from multiple different sources, and two times I've had a heart like palpitations, like tightness of chest when I was running. It's really scary, especially when you consider there was a cardiovascular related death in the CJC 1295 trials, and that's why they stopped them. Okay, now it's been determined that that's likely not because of CJC 1295, but when you feel like your heart's going to come out of your chest after dosing this stuff, it's pretty worrying, right? So that's my personal reason for not liking CJC 1295. A lot of people use it with no issues, but when you start getting side effects from the GH secretagogue itself and not just the GH, that's when I start to be like, okay, just use GH if you can find it, right? So I'm gonna put this in. I would put this in A tier because it is less expensive and it does have pretty good effects on GH, less than testosterone, but still pretty good. But just because of my personal experience, like I'm never gonna use this again. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Okay, and that's no DAC, by the way. Now, let me explain DAC. DAC is drug affinity complex. And what this is this is a complex that they add, they modify the molecule so that it binds to albumin in the blood, and it retains a half-life of 6 to 8 days. Okay, so you only have to dose this once or twice per week, and this is going to raise your GH, kind of amplifying your natural pulses, so making them stronger and longer, resulting in kind of the most GH secretion out of any secretagogue, right? Because these ones, let's say testosterone, let's say CJC, ipamorelin, for the max, you're going to be wanting to do these 2 to 3 times a day, as well as doing them like beforehand fasted and post afterwards fasted, because that's when you're going to get the best effects with the GH release. Okay, which can be really troublesome injecting yourself 2 to 3 times a day. Okay, now CJC 1295 with this long half life, that's not an issue, and it will have the greatest GH release of any GH peptide. Okay, now I'm conflicted to put this in A tier or B tier. But like I said, I had a bad experience with this, so I just can't put it in D tier, A tier. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Okay. All right, so that is all. Oh, Sermorelin. Now, Sermorelin is kind of the worse, like little brother of Tesamorelin. It's just less potent, but it is safe. It is FDA approved for children with GH deficiency, and so it works. It's just kind of the thing that like your friend's mom who's into peptide would use to get like a little bit better sleep and like nicer skin and nails, kind of thing, right? You'd never see like a bodybuilder using this. It's just fairly weak, but it is safe. So I'm going to put this in C tier. Okay. Now we're getting into the GHRPs. So the thing you need to know about all GHRPs is they basically work off the ghrelin receptor. They're essentially ghrelin mimetics, right? And we'll talk about MK677 in a second. But these ghrelin mimetics, what they do, because on your anterior pituitary, ghrelin acts to release growth hormone, right? This is the mechanism of action of these. But also, there's other ghrelin receptors on your hypothalamus, which makes you hungry, right? So these peptides will often make you hungry, as well as increase your cortisol and increase your prolactin, right? And so it depends how messy the peptide is. Now, hexarelin is very messy, okay, but it's also very effective. So it has the highest GH pulse, but out of any GH peptide, right? It's short-lived, but it has a very high GH pulse, but it's very messy. It increases cortisol, it increases prolactin, it's going to increase hunger, and in addition, because this acts so strongly, it's going to downregulate the receptors over time, which isn't something you want because then it's going to become less effective over time. Okay, so hexarelin, this is not something you want to be using. If you're at the point where you feel like you need this much GH, I would advise just using HGH. Okay, that's why hexarelin is going to go. I'm going to put it in F tier. All right, ipamorelin. Now, this is in sharp contrast to hexarelin because it's actually very selective for GH release. Okay, but that also means it's weaker. So what you kind of see, less selective, more strong, more selective, less strong. Okay, so it's less selective, or it's more selective, and the GH release is tightly controlled, you'll often see people not reporting hunger on ipamorelin. You see very little elevation in prolactin and cortisol, and it's generally just a well-studied, safe peptide. Okay, so for that reason, I'm going to put it in A tier. The only problem with it is it's like I said, it's not that strong, but it's something you'd want to pair with tesamorelin, CJC, GHRH, right? Also, the half-life is relatively short, so you can dose multiple times per day. Okay, next is GHRP and GHRP2 and GHRP6. Okay, now the thing about these is they're kind of just like old, like like battering ram peptides, um, which are mainly nowadays just used for the hunger effects. Because honestly, there's better options. You have ipamorelin. The benefit of these is they're cheap if you want to use them. But I would only advise using them as really like if you need to get hungry. Okay, if you're trying to bulk and maybe you don't want to use MK, then I would use these. So for that reason, I'm gonna put these both in, and GHRP6 is more effective at making you hungry. Okay, GHRP2 has a more potent growth hormone release. GHRP6 is better at making you hungry. Okay, finally, we have MK677. Now, this is a peptide I like to talk about because a lot of people haphazardly just think, oh, I'll hop on MK677. It's oral, right? It's a very like tempting entry level kind of thing because you don't have to inject. The problem is the benefit and the problem, right? It's an oral ghrelin mimetic that essentially is active for the whole day. Okay, so with daily dosing, you're getting continuous ghrelin receptor activation as well as GH pulses. So it's good at raising IGF-1 to like top of the reference range. The problem is with this around the clock GH release, you also get around the clock hunger because it's not selective. It's not like ipamorelin for the anterior pituitary. It will make you hungry, and this is something you often see, and that's because it's acting on the hypothalamus as a ghrelin mimetic. Okay, now the problem with this is it has the side effects of GH, but it's almost worse because it has this around the clock action. When you dose GH, if you're smart about it, you'll dose fasted, okay? And that's to minimize the um, insulin resistance effects that you get from GH. Okay. Now the thing is, with MK677, it's around the clock, so there's growth hormone released into the blood, liberating free fatty acids, interfering with insulin, and also it's making you hungrier, which is making you eat more, which is also worsening your insulin resistance. It's making your water retention worse. Like this is often touted to be worse for water retention from a bloating standpoint than like GH itself. Okay, that's often people's experience. So MK677 overall, I don't really like it. I'm tempted to put it in F tier, but it does have a practical use. I'm gonna put it in B tier for one scenario, which is you need to eat. You're like a hard gainer and you need to eat. Okay, this is really good for this because it's stimulating your appetite like 24/7. But be careful. Get a blood glucose monitor if you're going to be using MK677. Okay, so that's everything. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Some of my personal experience went into this, so it's definitely not objective, but it's my tier list. So MK677, we're gonna put in B tier for gaining weight. Okay, if you're losing weight, for the love of God, don't use MK677. Use tesamorelin, use ipamorelin, use something that doesn't affect your hunger. Use your brain. Bye.